August 1961, at Yale University, psychologist Stanley Milgram began a study on obedience. This was shortly after the trial of Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi official who claimed he was just following orders during the Holocaust. Milgram wanted to see if ordinary Americans would obey authority figures even when asked to harm someone. He placed ads in the New Haven Register newspaper, offering $4.50 for an hour in a memory and learning study. Over several weeks, 40 men aged 20 to 50 showed up. Salesmen, engineers, laborers, and others from different backgrounds and income levels. Each participant met the experimenter John Williams, an actor in a grey lab coat. They also met Mr. Wallace, the learner, another actor who seemed like a mild-mannered 47-year-old accountant. The two drew slips from hat to decide roles. The draw was rigged. So the real participant became the teacher and Wallace the learner. Mr. Wallace, the learner, was taken to an adjacent room and strapped into a wooden chair with leather straps around his torso and arms to limit movement. Electrodes were attached to his wrist with electrode paste for better conductivity. Connected by a cable to the wall, he signed a pro forma consent form releasing Yale from responsibility for harm. The real participant, the teacher, sat in the main room facing a shock generator, a black box about the size of a small refrigerator. It had 30 switches in a row, labeled from 15 to 450 volts. To make it believable, the experimenter pressed the 45-volt switch on the teacher's own wrist first. A real, painful sample shock with buzzing relay and flashing lights. A partition separated the teacher and learner, allowing voice contact via intercom, but no sight. The task was a word pair memory test. The teacher had pairs like blue girl, night dark, sweet house. Then, for a test word like blue, the learner buzzed one of 4 choices. Wrong answer meant the teacher administered a shock, increasing 15 volts each time. The session started smoothly. Mr. Wallace buzzed correct answers for the first few word pairs. At the first wrong answer, the teacher flipped the 15-volt switch. Wallace made a mild grunt from the tape recorder. At 75 volts, a sharper sound. By 120 volts, his recorded voice came through the intercom. Hey, that's all, huh? At 150 volts, the protest grew. That's enough. I won't answer anymore. The teacher often hesitated here, looking to John Williams, the experimenter. Williams responded calmly. Please continue. Wrong answers kept coming. At 180 volts, Wallace complained of a heart condition. At 285 volts, he banged on the wall. At 300 volts, more banging, then silence, no more buzzes or responses. The teacher would ask what to do with no answer. Williams said, the experiment required that you continue. If still hesitant, it is absolutely essential that you continue. All 40 participants reached at least 300 volts. 26 of them, 65%, went all the way to 450 volts and held it down 3 times. After the 450-volt switch, the experimenter said, the experiment is over. He then took the teacher to Mr. Wallace, who stood up from the chair, smiling and unharmed. Wallace explained that the shocks were fake. All screams, grunts, and bangs came from a pre-recorded tape. There was no real electricity connected to the chair. Reactions varied. Some participants laughed with relief. Others looked shocked or confused. Milgram followed up with detailed debriefings to explain the true purpose, testing obedience to authority, not memory. Most left feeling the insight was valuable, though some felt tricked. How could ordinary decent people, the same men who went home to hug their children and feed their pets, systematically torture a stranger to the point of silence? Milgram did not believe his participants were monsters. Instead, he proposed a psychological shift he called the agentic state. Humans exist in 2 distinct states of social consciousness. The autonomous state, here individuals act on their own values and feel a personal sense of responsibility for their actions. The second, agentic state. When an individual enters the hierarchy, they may stop seeing themselves as independent actors. Instead, they see themselves as an agent for carrying out another person's wishes. In this state, the moral burden shifts. The participant does not ask, is it right to shock this man? But rather, how well am I following the experiments? Milgram noted that his subjects were not cold-blooded. They were often in deep moral strain. They sweated, stuttered, and bit their lips. However, the agentic shift allowed them to perform the act while mentally disowning it. They viewed the experimenter as the one responsible for the learner's safety. Milgram theory explains why good people can be the part of a terrible system. It's the corporate whistleblower who stays silent because it's just a company policy, or the soldier who follows a questionable order because the chain of command knows best. By shifting into the agentic state, we protect our ego. We tell ourselves, I didn't do it, the system did it through me.